Hi everybody, welcome to the very first Everyday Yarnworks podcast. This is actually the third attempt at me making my very first podcast because first time you couldn't see me and the second time you couldn't hear me. So if I'm shouting a little bit, sorry. This is my third try, so I really want to get this out there and start doing this. So if something's a little bit off and a little bit wonky, forgive me. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Ruth. I'm the designer behind Everyday Yarnworks, and I've recently discovered the world of podcasts, and I love it. I had tried doing Facebook Live videos, and I found that they were fun, but I was expecting to be able to have a conversation with people, like some of the bigger name designers, and I found that people don't necessarily come on and chat when I do live videos, just because I don't have a massive following. So I love the idea of podcasts because I can record this now and then upload it for you guys, and you can watch it whenever you feel like it, which is awesome. Because I like making videos. Well, that's not true. I'm learning to like making videos because in general, I don't like putting myself in front of the camera that much, but I decided that for this year, I'm going to. Because if I'm uncomfortable in front of the camera, then that's something I need to challenge myself with. And one of my crafting, knitting goals for this year is to do things that challenge me, or to do things that I might be uncomfortable with, so I can grow as a person and as a crafter. Let's see. So that's why I'm going to start doing this. I would like to do them weekly, but I don't know if I'm going to be able to, purely because I have two little kids. I have a 1-year-old and a 3-year-old, and right now is like, oh, it's like a miracle because they're both sleeping. They're both napping at the same time. So that is why I'm getting to do this right now. So this also might get cut short if one of them wakes up. I put the older one down and was like running down here, grabbing projects, grabbing yarn. And I was like, oh my gosh, I can do this. Quick, set everything up, get everything I want to tell people. So it might get cut short and I might seem a little bit frazzled because I am, and I'm really just excited to be able to do this. So who am I? I'm a relatively new designer. I've been knitting and crocheting since I was, I don't know, 8, 10, something like that. My mom taught me the basics of knitting. My grandmom taught me the basics of crocheting. Well, my grandmom taught me how to do a chain stitch, but she lived 10 hours away in North Carolina. I'm in Philadelphia. So she taught me how to chain stitch, and then it was time for us to go home. So little 8 or 10-year-old me chain stitched an entire skein of yarn that I wrapped into a ball. And so I had this ball of chain stitch sitting in my room for a while because that's what I knew how to do. Which is kind of funny. But the rest I learned how to do out of library books because back in the day, we didn't have YouTube, which is kind of funny that I'm making a YouTube video for you guys right now talking about how I learned everything out of library books. But there you go. So I knit, crochet, I've recently learned how to spin, and I'm loving that. And I dye yarn a little bit. I don't do it professionally, but it's really fun to do unexpectedly. So I kind of get like cheap yarn and food coloring and play around with it because I'm not brave enough to use nice yarn and nice dyes yet. But that's me. Maybe if I'm feeling brave next week, I'll show you some of it. But I've only been designing, to come back to that point, for about 2 years because, well, my son's 3. So I kind of I became a stay-at-home mom after he was born, and I found that I had not a lot of time on my hands, but I realized that doing something that I love could also be shared with other people, because I love looking at a ball of yarn or looking at a skein of yarn and thinking to myself, I know exactly what that wants to be, and not only can I make things for people, but now I can show others how to make this beautiful thing that I've envisioned in my head. So that's why I started designing, because I'm not really a touchy-feely person. I'm not super emotionally driven. So for me to have something like knitting and crocheting and spinning where I go, oh, that's pretty, I can tell people about the pretties, that's not really me. It's a new aspect of myself, so it's kind of a journey of me discovering part of me that I didn't know about, and it's just, I don't know, I like making people happy. So anyway, let me stop talking about me, and I will start talking about yarn things, which I'm sure is what you all are on here to see anyway, and thank you if you've stuck with me through my little ramble. Today I'm drinking black tea with milk and sugar. This is, what is it? It's Twining's Irish Breakfast. It's one of my favorites. I really, really like it. So each week I'm going to talk a little bit about what I'm making, what I've recently finished, anything design related, if I have a new test coming out, or I have a new pattern that's been released, or anything like that. I'll tell you guys a little bit about it. And because I can just show you on a video instead of taking like really nice photos, you might get to see some things that I don't post photos of because it's easier to just show you on a video. So knitting things, which actually is going to fall into the designing category, sort of. Everything's going to be a little bit intertwined because that's how I view fiber arts. I know there's a lot of people who just knit or just crochet or just dye or just spin, but apparently I'm not one of those people. I see it, instead of seeing it as separate arts, I see them as different aspects of the same craft. So when I look at knitting or I look at crocheting, I see it as the same art, just that you have to use the right tools for the right job. So if I see, okay, let's start with this. If I see this yarn, it would look beautiful knitted, but it happened to speak to me and tell me that it wanted to be crocheted. So I crocheted it instead of knitting it. And some yarns look better knit and some yarns look better crocheted, and that's just the way it is. So this podcast is probably going to be a little bit jumbled. It's probably not going to be separate segments like I want it to be because that's what other people do, but that's okay because I am not other people. And this is probably going to be a little bit different. That's okay. Things I've finished recently. This is really exciting for me. For years, I tried to knit socks, and I wear a US women's 8.5, and I would knit these socks, and I'd spend all this time knitting socks, and they'd come off my needles, and they would fit my mom, who wears a women's 5, which is a significantly smaller sock. Like, it's so much smaller. I couldn't even get it on my foot. Like, I couldn't get the heel over my heel. So I just stopped knitting socks for a while. I was like, whatever, I can just be a everything else knitter. Knit sweaters, blankets, accessories, toys, like literally everything else except for socks. And shawls, for some reason. No shawls, don't know why. But, I'm a part of a group on Ravelry called, and you're gonna see my nerdiness, called the Harry Potter Knitting and Crochet House Cup. And it's a bunch of people who like Harry Potter, And it's kind of a little bit like role-playing, but not too in-depth, because you make projects, and every month you submit them for basically virtual points. It's like an online competition. Kind of nerdy, but that's okay. Because the reason I like it is it's a really big international community, and there's a lot of people who are very encouraging, and they're willing to share their knowledge, which is fantastic, because there's a couple people in that group that for the past, I want to say maybe 6 to 9 months, maybe even a full year, has been encouraging me, Ruth, try knitting socks again. You can totally do this. We will help you. We'll help you troubleshoot. Try knitting socks again. And one of the things that they encouraged me to do, which this is so elementary, it's ridiculous, that I didn't think of it, is they told me to swatch. The word that everybody hates, it's swatch. You have to swatch. If your socks don't fit, it's because your gauge isn't right. Swatch, swatch, swatch. So I did, and I finally made socks that fit, and I'm so excited. Check out, well, let me hold it up like this. Check it out. I made socks that fit, and I'm so freaking excited. I can't even, contain myself. The pattern is called Come Along Pond by Java Pearl Designs, and I will link her in the description of the video below when I upload it. And anybody that I talk about, I will link them in the description also, so don't be like, oh my gosh, who did she say? I got you. I'll link it. So this is called Come Along Pond by Java Pearl Designs, and for those of you who aren't nerdy like me, that's a Doctor Who reference. And the yarn, because I know you guys have all been eyeing it up, is by Dragon Horde Yarn on Instagram, and I will link her Etsy shop also. And the colorway is called Sea Critters, which I love. And I also love that it's called Sea Critters and the word pond is in the pattern title. Like I said, nerdy, but that's okay. I'm really excited that they fit. I'm so stoked. So that's one thing that I finished recently. And another thing that I finished recently are these. These are chunky, thick slipper socks. And this is actually a pattern that I have in testing right now, and it's gonna be published soon. And it might even be published before this video gets up on the internet. So I'm still a little indecisive about the name, so I can't tell you what the name of them is yet because I'm still being a little indecisive. But check these out. Chunky slipper socks. And they're intended for either people who, like me, just left sock knitting alone because it was scary or because it was whatever, if they had issues like me, cool. Chunky socks are an awesome way to start, and I really wish that I had started with sock knitting too. So this is a new design coming out in a bulky weight, number 5 bulky weight. Another design that I have in testing are these. These are kind of a complementary piece to a scarf pattern that I already have out. The scarf pattern is my Almost Aran Phobius. So it's a faux Mobius scarf. And the reason it's a faux Mobius scarf is because I didn't actually knit it in the Mobius method. It's a long scarf that I twisted a little bit and then joined back together. So these are the complement to that. These are also in testing, and they'll probably be released sometime, maybe around Valentine's Day, I think they should be done. I think my testers are going to be done with them next weekend. And if you notice, I only have one glove on. I have to make the other one before I can release it. So the pattern might get released whenever I make the second glove. There you go. So these are knitting patterns that I have in testing right now. Something else that I've finished lately, I'm so proud of it, is this fancy dancy guy. Let me take this off for you. It's so pretty and I love it so much. And I don't think you can see the whole thing on the camera because it's so big. It's like a blanket, but it's a shawl. And it has tassels and I love them. I'm not really a shawl person. Oh my gosh, I'm so cold now that I took this off. Hang on. Shawl back on. I think I just became a shawl person after making this and like taking it off and putting it back on. You guys may have just witnessed me becoming a shawl person. Pretty sure it just happened. This is a companion piece to a hat I already have out that has this stitch in it. This is a really cool, I forget the name of it. I forget the name of the stitch, which is terrible, but it's basically an elongated crochet stitch, which I have a video tutorial for on this channel. So if you scroll down, you'll be like, there's the name of the stitch that Ruth couldn't remember. Got you covered. So this is a companion piece to a slouchy hat, and it's sport weight, Manos del Uruguay. And you'll see more details about that. This is going to go up for testing soon. I have a couple more technical things that I have to finish with it, and then it'll go up for testing, which I'm very excited about. Let's see, other things. Oh, yes. I have something else, another design that I'm working on that is almost done, but not quite. So I'll show you part of it, but not the whole thing. And what I can show you is this. And this is a beautiful chunky, this is going to be a chunky weight, a bulky weight shawl. And the colorway is called Mermaid Party by Yarn Cafe Creations on Instagram and Etsy. I think her name is the same across the board. She's Yarn Cafe Creations, and I will link her too. And this is the softest and the squishiest yarn ever, and I love it. And she even dyed me a matching skein because I played Yarn Chicken and I lost on a knitted on border with like 8 inches to go. So I just got this yesterday and I will attach it and I will finish my shawl, and I'm very excited that that's going to be done. And then I'll be able to show you guys next time, I think. Probably next time. Let's see. I did knitting, I did crocheting, kind of testing. This is probably sticking out like crazy. I'm sorry I'm sitting here fiddling with this on a video. What I'm spinning right now. One of my favorite dyers is created by Elsie B. And she, I swear, the woman must do nothing except sit in her house and dye beautiful fiber all day, every day, because she cranks this stuff out like it's just nothing. Every single day, she's like, here's this new beautiful thing. Here's that new beautiful thing. Let me throw all of this gorgeous wool in front of you and make you want to buy it all. Ask me how I know. It's not a bad thing. It's a very good thing because her work is beautiful. It's a bad thing when you're trying to not spend money on yarn and not make your stash any bigger. So this is half a braid because I already started spinning it. But this is called Gumdrops and Rain Clouds. Oops, dropping it, but that's okay. Now you can see the rain clouds part. Gumdrops and Rain Clouds, and it is on Rambouillet, which I had never spun before now, and oh my gosh, it is fantastic. It is like, how do I explain it? It's kind of like Polworth, but it's just, look at this, it's like fluffy and wonderful. It's not smooth like merino. It's like a squishy, bouncy, kind of sticky yarn wool, which is great because for the first time ever, my singles are coming out at like a lace weight. So I think, we'll see, this might come out to be a 2-ply fingering weight, or maybe even light fingering weight, and I'm freaking out. I'm so excited. I cannot wait to finish this. So that's kind of what I'm working on right now. And I'm also making up more samples of these socks in Lion Brand Scarfy, because one of my testers, she's gonna laugh if she watches this video, because she actually used this exact yarn to test the pattern for me, and I loved how it looked in the photo so much that I ran out and got myself some. So I got this color, let's see, this is charcoal and aqua, charcoal/aqua. And I got this one too. This is charcoal/magenta, which it's not really magenta, it's more of like a royal purple. But this is to show you, I wanted to talk about this too. I've recently discovered higher quality indie dyed yarns, obviously, as you can see from this is who I bought from on Etsy, and this is Manos del Uruguay, and don't I sound like I use all of these nice yarns? And up until maybe like 6 months ago, the box store acrylic or acrylic blends was pretty much all I used. So my explosion of indie yarns and really high quality and kind of expensive yarns, but I love them so much, is because I've just discovered them. So if you remember how I said with knitting and crochet that I believe in using the right tool for the job, I think I also feel that way about yarn. It's kind of something that I'm still processing in my head and trying to figure out where I stand, whether I want to keep designing with yarns like this, whether I want to only design with like higher quality yarns. I'm not sure, because obviously I want my work to be professional, but I don't think that wanting my work to look professional means that I necessarily have to use a certain set of materials. Like, for example, if this sock, I want it to be really durable and machine washable because I have little kids, maybe 100% wool that's hand dyed isn't the best choice for that. Maybe the best choice for it is what I used, which is Lion Brand Woolies Chunky, which is $10 for a pair of socks. Or maybe it's something like this that's, I think it's mostly acrylic. Let me look. It is 78% acrylic and 22% wool. So maybe something like this that's a little more durable, maybe for right now, this is the best choice for me to make these designs in because of what I want to use them for. And I'm sure there's people that will disagree. And I'm sure there's also some of you that will say, oh my gosh, she's finally talking about a yarn that I use or a yarn that I've heard of, which is, I think, the way I feel about using yarn choice, I guess would be the word, because I want my designs to be accessible to everybody. And whenever I say that, I inevitably get at least one person that says, okay, but can't you order from Knit Picks? Or can't you order from Craftsy because they have discounted yarn? And yes, people can, but I also understand the allure of going into a store, buying yarn that you're not spending a fortune on, and having it still be beautiful and having it be readily accessible now. And so I think the designs you're going to see from me in the future are going to be a combination of both. There's going to be some projects like this, and there's going to be some projects like this, because I don't want anybody to be excluded because they choose not to use expensive yarn, or maybe because they can't afford to use expensive yarn, because truth be told, I'm on a yarn diet and I can't afford to use expensive yarn right now. So I'm using up the nice stuff that I have, but I'm not buying more right now because my husband is a landscaper, which means in the winter he does snow removal and it's not snowing. So I am on a stash down. And that was kind of a tangent, but it's a reality, and it's something that I've been thinking a lot about lately, is that I don't want my designs and my crafting to be inaccessible to people just because I use things that are really expensive. Along those lines, I have just started doing a series of videos called Knitting for Crocheters. The first video is already up. The second video will be up in a couple of days, and the reason I did it is because I see a lot in the crochet community people who are intrigued by the idea of knitting, or maybe they've tried knitting before and something didn't quite click, and I don't want knitting to be inaccessible to crocheters just because it didn't work for them before. So I've started a video series, Knitting for Crocheters. I will link the first video in the description also, or you can probably see it on the side of the screen. But I'm going to be doing it as a series and posting one video a week, hopefully. So maybe my patterns will get even a little more accessible to you crocheters who are learning how to knit, which would be awesome. Let's see. Last thing, podcasts that I have been listening to / watching. Which is kind of funny because I was trying to explain to my husband and to my mom what a knitting podcast is. And my husband was like, yeah, podcast, where you download it on your iPod and you listen to it. And I was like, yes, but then how could I show people this? I can't show you this with your ears. You have to see it. So, yeah, that was kind of interesting to try to explain. But podcasts I have been watching, obviously, the Girls in the Yarn Cafe, which is Christy from Yarn Cafe Creations, and her daughter Tristan from Dragon Horde Yarn. Obviously, I have a problem. That is their podcast. And who else was I watching? Knitterarium, which is Ruth McKeon. I will link her and I will spell out Knitterarium. But she's fun to watch. She's in Ireland. And who else? I started watching Bad Wolf Girl Sits and Knits, but I haven't finished one of her episodes yet. And, oh, you know who's really interesting? Kammebornia. She is a knitter in, I want to say Sweden, and I'm really sorry if that is not the right country, but she does monthly podcasts, and there is beautiful scenery and beautiful knitting, and she and her husband are really, they're just so sweet to watch. It's like, I watch them and go, wow, that is adorable. I love watching them. They're so sweet. So that's who I've been watching, and maybe I'll have more things to talk about next time. I'm actually really curious to see if this came out and if the whole thing recorded. I'm really, really hoping it didn't stop recording in the middle of me talking, because that would be very sad. But I think I'm at the end for right now. So I guess, I don't know what you say at the end of a podcast. Thank you for watching. If you want to see more from me, like or subscribe and comment and tell me if there's anything you'd like me to talk about, or just in general. I would love to hear from you guys. Let me know you're watching. See you later.